I'm Doreen Radin. I am here with Jason Goodwin, the founder and creator of Masterminds, the community, hoping to share some secrets to client acquisition and share a lot of good information with you. So, Jason, could we start just a little bit of your nursing background and how you got involved, well, clinical nursing, and how you got involved with the legal nursing piece?
Sure, no problem. So I am a perioperative, a CNOR, perioperative nurse in all the areas around the OR, before, pre, intra, and post, and then anything procedural or procedural sedation, endoscopy, any of those types of procedures, pain procedures. My story is I started out in the military, my first assignment, and I was med surg for only a year, and then went to Iraq. Deployed in 2003, and then I started working in periop and pretty much never left. 10 years or less after that, I went into management and so I've been a nurse 26 years now, but the last 15 years up to a year or two ago was spent in management, up to assistant administrator of a perioperative service, everything in between. So,
Very cool. And thank you for your service. That's amazing.
oh, thanks. Thank you.
What gap in legal nursing were you trying to fill when you thought of Fit Masterminds?
Yeah, so well, it's sort of I'm actually writing a book that we're going to publish pretty soon called Become a Legal Nurse Consultant by Accident. And that's because that's the way it sort of happened to me. My boss got a letter. He was an anesthesiologist. He got a letter from a lawyer, and I started asking him about it, and he said, Jason, more nurses are doing this work than doctors. And I said, really? That doesn't sound like what I've heard. He said, yeah, if there's a nurse involved in something, or if there's a hospital, you're the expert, not me. That like energized me, right? And I was like, well, I always kind of suspected that somebody could pay me to do the chart reviews and the root cause analysis and all that kind of stuff. So I started looking into it, and really what I tell people in our course is that it's about getting the first client, because once you do that, if you do a good job and you understand how to anticipate and serve the client's needs, they're loyal people, they're busy people, they will introduce you to colleagues, and that's how it all starts. Yeah.
And you mentioned a course. Could you tell me a little bit about what Masterminds has to offer and then the course that you referenced?
Yeah, sure. So website for the course is called RNHomeOffice.com. And that's a course that takes you in 6 weeks from uh, just being curious about being an LNC all the way to standing up your business and being ready to take clients. And that includes the information, education. It includes work products. It includes face-to-face meetings. And then it includes a mastermind community, which is a separate website. It's lncmasterminds.com. So we run those two combined programs. They're separate, but if you buy the course, you get the LNC Masterminds as well. And so the course was designed based on some requests that I got from other nurses that when I would tell them what I was doing, they would say, "Can you teach me?" And there was a lot of nurses quitting and wanting to do something different. And so we decided that we could help nurses do that. And then it evolved over time as well to, hey, it's great that we give them a course, but what people are really telling us that they want as well is the support, the ongoing mentorship, the networking. So less than a year ago, we started the lncmasterminds.com. A lot of cool stuff. We have, first of all, the whole community is gamified. So when you go in there and you participate and you engage, you get points. And then, there's a leaderboard and all that kind of stuff and, competition. But what ends up happening is when you reach certain levels, you can actually get access to free courses, mini courses. And so those don't cost you any more money as long as you're a member of the community. So we think it's the most dynamic network in the market. The other things that we do is we have a monthly mastermind meeting where we help educate each other. We bring in client acquisition specialists, social media experts, marketing experts. We have our own members talk about their cases, and hopefully it gets people excited. We have what's called an attorney locator, and that has over 10,000 attorneys and they're available to you to reach out to via an email template with one click. Also, the LinkedIn, it's directly connected to their LinkedIn with one click. And these are all people that you don't have to cultivate or go out and scrape from websites. You can actually just use our database. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback. You can search by very dynamic search parameters, so you can really hone in on what you're looking for. And then the final thing, the one that's the most powerful and most popular, is that we have a referral feed. So every time you visit, there's a feed that will tell you if anybody is referring cases and things like that, and what you can do about it. So this is the course page for our website. It's RNHomeOffice.com, just like it sounds. And so you can visit this and check out our course. It's pretty easy to get involved. You can just say view all the courses. Also, we have some frequently asked questions on here, some testimonials from 8 of our students, video testimonials. Okay. And then our training program, as I was saying earlier, it's a 4-part process. We have on-demand recorded content. We have business work products, and then live workshops. And then once you finish that, you go into the Mastermind Network, which you are a member of, 6 weeks long. And we think it's fantastic. Of course, we would. And then once we finish the course, we go into the Mastermind Network, and that's what you're involved with as well. This is our community here. It's a separate website called lncmasterminds.com. And so what ends up happening is you click in here, and if you're a paid member through the course, then you go right into this feed section. We do actually have a free trial membership, but you don't have access to the inner circle, we call it, membership, but you can see, the way it works and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool for people that are not sure yet. They can poke around. But this is our message feed. And so this is an example of what one of the postings would be. This is for a surgical expert with experience purchasing surgical kits. Here's an ENT lidocaine toxicity expert. So a couple surgical cases. Critical care nurse practitioner. This is one of our members that just put her information up here and introduced herself. ICU falls rapid response. So there's just a lot of different things that are on here that you can, and if it's in your wheelhouse, you just jump in there and click on it and say, hey, I'm interested, and attach your CV. And that person, if it's somebody else, it's not me, I don't dictate how they run their subcontracting arrangement, but they do that directly with you. Or maybe they send your information directly to the attorney, depending on how they do their work. And then we have our monthly events that I told you about, which are every month, our educational webinars, essentially. And so it's under events, and you can go here and see what those are that are coming up. The next one's in 3 weeks. And then we have our leaderboard I told you about. The community is gamified, right? So we have these different members that have accomplished different levels of points. And once you get up to certain levels, you go to a different section. And then as you progress through it, you access different courses that are free. So once you access level 1, you get something called the Power of Online Traffic Checklist. This is free, actually, with the trial. Once you get to level 2,
I've done that one, actually.
You did?
Yep, it was good.
Oh, cool. Okay. Level 2 is a free course. You're going to get there too eventually, I'm sure, or even higher. So this is digital presence. These are mini courses. And then next on level 3 is personal branding. So you can use your engagement points in this community to educate yourself without having to spend more money on your business, which we think is really cool. And then the final thing that this site has is the attorney locator. So this is a website where you can go in and search by state, by practice area, and you can do whatever you want. You can search by keyword. Okay, so you'll see that they're doing that here, and they'll click on personal injury, find attorneys, and you go down there and you have different attorneys that are available. You can click on the emails, you can click on the LinkedIn, and they take you directly to the contact. So we feel like that's certainly unique in the market with a networking community, and we include that currently include that in your membership if you join. So pretty cool.
Very helpful.
Thank you. We're very excited about it, and there's a lot of very positive feedback that we're getting from that.
People can access cases right from you, right? And subcontract as well.
Absolutely. So, what the way it works is I have my own firm separate from this business. It's called innovativecultures.com. And this is a firm that I've had for 9 years. And so I have clients, I have referrals. Many of them are not in my wheelhouse. I'm a peri-op nurse. And so if somebody comes to me and says, um, I need an ER nurse, that's not me. So I can keep that attorney relationship because I can say, well, I know over 300 nurses that are involved in this community and we help each other. And I know their backgrounds. And so I can hook you up and send them your way. And so that allows somebody else to have an opportunity. And then, of those 300 people that are involved, they're referring their own cases when that happens to them. So it's a great place for new trainees or even people that are just wanting to get into the community to understand how to get clients without even having to deploy some of the strategies that we teach in the course. It's like a separate stream of revenue.
Love it. You're helpful on all tiers there. I love it.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
what
we
was
hope so.
your biggest fear when launching the community? How did you overcome that?
Well, so we've had the course for over 3 years, and so we have learned over time, and that's been through trial and error a lot and failure, But one of the biggest things with that business, as well as when we started the mastermind, is anybody going to come? Right? You can build it, but is anyone going to care? Mastermind, it was a little different because we kept hearing. I talked to a lot of people, right? And I kept hearing the same thing. I don't. Here's what they would say, and some of them would come from other courses, and I always ask, like, why are you at our course? You already took one, right? And they'll say, well, I took the course, but I didn't get the work products to do the job. I don't feel comfortable with that. I didn't get any networking and nurturing and mentorship. Okay. And so that's the way we decided this is probably a good way to do that. Our course gives the work products, it gives the education, gives the face to face interactions so that you're ready. But the other side of that is that mentorship piece that you graduate into after you finish the course.
Fantastic. And if you were starting over today, how would you start differently, or what would you recommend, especially for the folks just coming in?
Well, as a legal nurse consultant, what I would do differently. Well, one of the things I tell everybody is I do recommend that you get training, because one of the things that I did was I jumped right into it because I saw a doctor doing it, but he wasn't trying to grow his practice. He was an anesthesiologist that just happened to scoop these cases up whenever they came sporadically. But that wasn't something he was trying to grow. So there was no marketing on his end. And then there was no understanding on my part of some of the mistakes that you can make. And so that's really why I say, don't just jump into this before you understand what the scope of and the standards are. You could get, for instance, a Daubert challenge, which means that they question your expertise. Like, for instance, if I take something that's out of my wheelhouse and I get excluded from the case, ultimately that's something I would disclose. It's a public record. So that can hamper my future ability to get cases, right? So there are specific things that you have to understand that you cannot do, you can't opine to. And so if you do, you could be putting yourself at risk. And I did some of those things in my first case without understanding it. I also, a couple of times had some attorneys that were new or maybe didn't understand this area. And I wasn't able to see that coming and advocate for myself. So luckily for me, there was nothing catastrophic that happened, but I learned from those lessons. And frankly, some of those lessons in the course are from my failures.
Fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. We're happy to build off of your mistakes and hopefully avoid them.
Well, it makes my mistakes worth something.
Love
Yeah.
that. What would you say your personal habits that have contributed to your success are?
Well, I don't sit well, so I have to, keep pushing.
Same.
And so I don't know if that's an attribute sometimes, but it does result in a lot of motion towards something that I'm interested in. And so I never set out to do this work, both as a course provider or in the legal nurse consulting area. But what I was told in both instances was this is something you don't know about that people need. And so when I saw the need, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, even though I'm a registered nurse and I've always worked for hospitals. I've always wanted to do that. In fact, at one point when I was really disillusioned with nursing, I looked into buying a sandwich franchise. And so I was ready to just like throw in the towel and go, make Subway sandwiches, but I'm glad I didn't.
Well, as a fellow RN, I think we've all been there at some point, for
Agreed.
sure. Any personality type for folks coming in and wanting to join the legal nurse world that you really feel is well suited or not so much, maybe you should think about something else?
Mm. Well, I wouldn't want to discourage anyone, but I think people that are just getting into nursing, you can certainly learn about it. You can start your journey now because it is a bit of a momentum build, right? This career, but if you're just getting started and you're less than 5 years and you're expecting to go sit in a courtroom somewhere, it's probably not realistic because what the attorneys are thinking when they meet you is what is a jury going to think of this person, right? Are they honest? Can they speak professionally? Do they, and we're nurses, so we're generally trusted, but somebody that's brand new or is too eager to please can sometimes be an issue. You do have to be willing to say no. And a lot of the times when I've said, I'm going to actually have a meeting later today where I'm going to tell a client that I can't support the opinion.
Mm.
But every time I've done that, it's been a difficult conversation. But usually that client comes back later on, even though I couldn't help them because they know that I'm going to be a straight shooter. So that's an important thing as well.
Fair. So it sounds like being able to have those difficult conversations is key within the industry as well.
Definitely. And we talked about this earlier is the other thing that's important is understanding your worth. Don't undersell yourself. We're not comfortable in nursing generally talking about money. It makes us feel like our priorities are in the wrong place. But the truth of the matter is that we're always on the side of quality and safety, whether you are reaffirming the care in a hospital or identifying something that should have happened for someone who was injured. We're always trying to reinforce quality and don't apologize for that. You have a lot of great experience and you should charge accordingly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where would you see the legal nurse consulting world in like 5 years or so?
Is this the AI question?
It could be, I suppose, but really,
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
I think it's a mix of AI. There's been a lot of new legal nursing nurses entering.
Yeah, right,
I
right.
think it seems, not that I've been in it too long, but it seems to be changing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see tons of people on my social media feeds and stuff like that, and I always have to remind myself: is it that there's just so many more people, or is it that the algorithms are showing me what I want to see? I'm not sure, but it does seem like there's a lot of people, coming into this arena. Um, as far as like the future of our profession, I see a lot of things changing with AI in general. Obviously, we don't know what that's going to look like in any career. We don't know what it's going to look like in as a legal consultant, and we don't know what it's going to look like for attorneys. And I was recently at an attorney conference, and it was a lot of fun. It was in San Diego. It was called Lottie Gras, and
Nice, love
we
that.
we had a blast. And every speaker talked about AI, right? And what it's going to mean for the client and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of trepidation for them. What I believe for us is that our job is going to change, right? Maybe, but right now I use AI to a limited extent because sometimes what I'll do is I will use AI to summarize a deposition, but I don't I still have to read the deposition and then reconcile those notes with my reconciliation, right? And so that's fine because I'm double checking that, and it's very helpful for me for um, using it as an adjunct to my notes. You can just sort of supplement it, but at the end of the day, I still have to do the work anyway.
For sure.
Over time, I think that there will be things that it helps you with. One of the things I'm actually speaking, what is it, next week at the AALNC conference in Orlando.
I'll be
And
there with you.
you will? Okay,
I
cool.
will.
We're gonna get together, have some coffee or something.
Absolutely.
Um, but that'll be fun. And yeah, on Friday the 13th, actually, I don't know about that, but we're going to be speaking on how it's called Beyond the Side Hustle. So how you can develop a new business or how you can develop an existing business. And one of the things that I talk about on the developing an existing business side, because I'm doing this with um, Robin Stacy, one of our other members of the community. She and I are talking, and in my section, I'm going to talk about a little bit about AI, but really I'm focusing on automation because there's this aspect to AI that people don't talk about very much. They talk about ChatGPT, right?
Mm.
But there's tools like Zapier or some of these other automation tools that you can use. And I'm going to go into those in my presentation, and they can make your life a lot easier. They can help automate tools. They can help you with your payroll scenarios. They can help you with your copy for social media communication or positioning yourself. So that's where I think it's going to be really helpful. But ultimately, you can have somebody tell you what the standard of care for something is, but you're going to need to, in order for AI to impact what we do, and I don't think they ever will, is you need to not only know what the standard of care was, but you need to know why it may have happened. You need to know the scenarios around what can cause an understaffing situation, and maybe what happened in that shift that you can see from the records that might be pertinent to the story of the case. So those are things that experience of a human being in the hospital can tell you. And until we see AI and robots actually standing nursing shifts, I don't think they're going to be able to do that.
That's fair. Although we may get there someday that they're in the hospitals. You
Maybe,
never know.
maybe.
All right. So all the new LNCs, the big question is marketing. How to
Yeah.
get that first case, the do's and the don'ts. What say you about how to get that first case, ways to market, ways not to market?
Yeah, so I have a specific opinion about that. Like most things, I have plenty of opinions. Um, and my opinion on that is that I see a lot of people that will be out there creating, sort of ads for their services as an LNC, or posts that talk about different things. Now, I think that I post for things, but what I really try to stick to is the clinical side. I actually don't even put my legal cases in my CV
Mm.
because I just wanted to stand on my clinical background. And so I position myself from a clinical standpoint. I don't really advertise myself on social media as an LNC or how I can help the attorney. I think they know that, and they don't want to be cold called or kind of bugged. So I try to position myself so that they come to me. And
Mm.
actually, that's kind of what has happened is if they see you out there talking about your area that you're a nerd in, then they're like,
Mhm.
I need a nerd from the OR, and so who's the nerd in the OR? Oh, this guy that keeps talking about the OR. Okay, maybe he's that guy, right? So
Mm.
that's my theory on marketing. And then, like I said, you get one, they introduce you to two more, and it just goes from there. I had a lawyer that I worked with that I'm in California, and she was down in LA. I don't know how she got my information originally. She didn't even tell me that she was super pleased with my work. I assumed that she was. And then she went to some conference and started, telling people about my name. And all of a sudden I started getting all these LA cases. And I was like, what is going on? Why LA? Because my cases are all over the country. I have probably 20% of them from California, but not a bulk. And
Mhm.
I found out, I started asking and they were like, oh yeah, this attorney mentioned you at a conference. And I was like, holy cow, it's
That's
made
awesome.
such a difference. So
Good for you.
yeah,
And
thank you.
you mentioned that the cold calling hasn't been going so well, which that's been my experience as well. Anything you highly recommend against doing for the newer LNCs that aren't familiar?
We have I talked about our attorney locator. We do have something that you can use to communicate that way, but
Mm,
those attorneys are also in our newsletter as well. So they're not exactly cold calls, but don't waste the attorney's time would be my advice. And that would mean don't bombard them with communication. Don't be intrusive. And I don't know what that looks like. That's a gray area, right? But I don't think that the strategy of I'm just gonna the volume is gonna be the way I do it. It's not necessarily that typical sales scenario, right? If you go on ChatGPT and say, "Tell me how to sell my LNC business," it's going to tell you, it's a volume game. Keep reaching out to people. Well, maybe that's true in sales, but I haven't found it to be true specifically in attorneys. You have to have that quality connection with somebody before they consider that. So just, be thoughtful about your strategy. And that can come, a lot from other LNCs as well.
mm,
Um, that's one of the reasons that we started the lncmasterminds.com situation is because I went to a group of other LNCs that were meeting, and I realized that my clients usually have come from attorneys, but there is so much uh, help from inside the community and so many people that see other cases that they aren't involved with, that there's a real opportunity for us to help each other internally. And so we thought, okay, well, let's turn this into something because we already have a course and we need to support people. So let's
mm.
build this situation. And it's been one of our most successful endeavors.
For sure. And I must say the LNC community, your community and masterminds and in general has been so supportive in my experience. Everyone's
Awesome.
amazing and wants to help each other and talk about different experiences. So that's really nice to see.
I'm really glad. Yeah, that's something we need to undo in nursing, right? Is like hoarding information. We need to help each other.
Yes,
Yeah.
that eat the young mentality. Not so
Yeah, we
much.
don't need that. We don't need
Nope.
that.
Nope, I agree. Could you share a success story that comes out of your community? Is anything in particular stand out, one or two people that have had great luck?
Absolutely. And I want to be clear about something. We talk about money, and I don't think it's something we should ignore. It exists, right? But I
Mm,
think, as I said before, nurses are uncomfortable with that. I think also we would never want the jury to think that this is about money for us. And so I do want to say it's not about the money, right? But the money is also what helps you create these scenarios that nurses are attracted to, which is some sort of alternative lifestyle where they don't have to work 4 and 5 hours, 5 shifts a week. Maybe they can get to 3 shifts a week, and then they can really show up for their patients, right? Instead of being burnt out. So,
mm,
but it is helpful, but it's a super cool. The things about it is that it's interesting and you feel important, and it's really challenging work. So I think that that's the things that I really appreciate about it. Success stories. I could talk about money. We had a person that invested in our course, and then even before the course was over, she got a case and then ended up billing a lot of hours for the case. It was necessary. So she didn't even know how to work in the community. But one of the things that we will do is if you're lucky enough to get a case while you're in the course, then we'll help you through it. Right. So I was at the elbow with her, giving her advice and things like that. And even there was a collection issue at one point, and I kind of feel like I can say I helped her push through that and stand firm in it. And next thing you know, I mean, she got like 4 or 5 times what she invested on her first case return. So,
Mm.
and it was a good learning experience for her. So, and now she's got this lifelong skill that she can continue to hone. And she's return on investment was with the first client. So that's a real success story for us. I would say that other people are referring cases to one another. I always, at first I was the one supplying any cases I could, but that's not a community, right? That's just me with a subcontractor group. And that's not what we want. We want a community of subcontractors that are working and helping each other work, and then growing together. So yeah, that's what has been another, I think, shining example that we're proud of.
Any particular way you think the newer LNCs coming in should, I mean, we mentioned a saturated market to some extent at this point. Any particular way you would recommend them coming in, trying to position themselves? Do you think the starting point would be like your course and joining the community and just going from there? Any other ideas of
Sure.
something that would be helpful for them?
Well, I don't think it is saturated. I think that there are a lot of people that are looking into it. And I don't mean to be derogatory when I say this, but I think there are also a lot of tourists, people that are interested but aren't really bought into what it's going to take to grow their profession, and
Mm.
maybe don't have the guidance, and so it unfortunately might fizzle out on their way to being successful. But it's not a question of if you can succeed; it's a question of when you employ certain strategies. So I think one of the things that could help nurses when they're getting into the community is get your CV up to date. That's the first. That's your shop window, right? And on social media, that's also like your storefront. But your make sure your social media is professional and up to date and impressive. So that means wordsmith it. Like make sure that what you want the attorneys or whomever to know, make sure they see it quickly. Same thing with your CV, right? A lot of narrative communication is great for a resume, but it may not be great for a CV when you want to get someone's attention, particularly at the top, right? We go through that in the course, and I think we give some great advice on it, but you can do that yourself, and ChatGPT can be very helpful with that too. So you can run it through there and say, give me 2 or 3 different examples of the best practices on how to get someone's attention, not just in the healthcare market, right? Make sure you say trying to create attention from attorneys as a legal nurse consultant with this background.
And you've kind of mentioned it so far, but what would you say differentiates successful legal nurse consultants in the first couple of years, from unsuccessful? It's you say more like the work product and not being too aggressive with the cold
Mm,
calling and all that kind of stuff. That sounds like really all of that is the big piece. Any other things that you can think of, or how would you summarize that maybe?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think a successful legal nurse consultant doesn't have to be someone who has started an LLC and has all this equipment. And that's another kind of strategy in our courses. We try to tell you, like, here's what you need right away. Don't buy anything else. Don't get excited. Don't, subscribe to QuickBooks yet, because that's going to be a $60 a month expense that you need to keep forever. So start small. You can be a sole proprietor for a long period of time, and don't have to quit your job. So don't, right? You don't want to quit so that you're less of an expert every day. And that's one of the
Mhm.
beauties of doing this work, because you don't have to quit. But I think it's successful. And by the way, just because I didn't mean to badmouth cold calling, because I have some of the most successful people that I've talked to, and one person in particular I'm thinking that went through our course. It's in our mastermind. She does everything, and so she like cold calls. She does marketing. I can't even remember all the things that she does. She goes to local mixers, right? Like Rotary Club, like stuff that I would never think to do. And hey, in like 18 months, she's gotten, I don't know, two hands full of cases. And
Wow.
that's really fast. And I was thinking, well, I mean, something is working in there, right? So
Mhm.
whatever works for you. The cool thing is it's nationwide, right? So you can work in any state if you are licensed. So some people, maybe you have like a judge in town or something like that. So maybe you have that local connection, but a lot of times you're not held to that either.
What's a realistic timeline for someone starting from scratch, from what you're saying?
Well, I mean, obviously, you heard what the best can be, right? Is what we just talked about with one of our students. Uh, you know, it's hard to say because the part that we can't control is what's going on in that person's life, how much time they're dedicating to it, how serious they are about changing their career. But I think that if you are fully participating in a training program and give it all you can, if you are participating in a community where you are supported, like a networking or mentorship community, like our community, but there are
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
If you're all the way bought in, I think that it's very reasonable to think that you can pull down at least one client in 90 days or 6 months at the latest. And the beauty of that is any most training programs that you might have to pay for, you're returning your investment. And in our course, what it costs, you'll usually return it on your first client.
Excellent. I mean, I don't have any other questions for you.
I have a question for you. So tell me about your background.
Here, I am newer to the LNC, but my clinical background is in all things behavioral health. So, patient psych, substance abuse, geriatrics, home health. I started at LLC. I kind of went all in
That's okay.
pretty
That's okay.
quickly. Like you, though, I came into a very serendipitous. I used to work with a psychiatrist who called me with a case and said they were looking for a nurse and would I be willing? And I love the work. My first degree is in psychology and criminal justice as well. So I already had a love of the law. I went back later in life for nursing and I loved it. I said, you know what? I'm gonna give this a spin, and I've been participating ever since. So I have about
Awesome.
4 or 5 cases under my belt so far.
Nice.
It's been great. And I've just really been going hard at meeting everybody, talking to everybody, doing courses, learning everything I can.
Yeah. Well, you wanting to do this in general tells me a lot about, your willingness and your motivation to do something, exceptional. And you're doing a pretty good job with your questions. Maybe you need a podcast. I don't know.
Perhaps that will be the next thing coming up. We'll
Awesome.
see.
Awesome.